Yeah, good afternoon, and welcome to this week's edition of the People Progressing podcast. And I have been waiting for this for a long time. I have who I call Mary the Awesome Grothe on my podcast today. And Mary, I'm going to introduce you a little bit, but I want you to introduce yourself. Just kind of tell us a little bit where you grew up, what you did as a kid, and some of your background going into this, so our listeners can kind of understand where you've come from.
Well, I came from Northwest Indiana. I know that's not the question you're asking me, but I grew up in the performing arts. I had a very interesting childhood. There were definitely two sides of it. I think if anybody outside looking in just looked at some of the experiences and the high points, they'd say, wow, that's really unique and really cool. The other half of the story is I was born to two parents that unfortunately had a lot of demons: alcoholism and abuse, mental health problems. There was quite a bit of turmoil just in my everyday life growing up. I was also the youngest of four kids. I have two much older half sisters, and the household was typically in disarray every day. I was the youngest, which means by the time you're the fourth kid, there's not a lot of oversight. I pretty much got away with anything that I needed to, but it also meant that I was very much on my own to figure out how to be independent and how to solve and satisfy my most basic needs, because I didn't have parents that were around. So I had to figure out quite a lot growing up. It was a very interesting upbringing. My parents owned a performing arts school, and we had a performing arts school in Northwest Indiana, just about a block and a half away from where we lived. And so my childhood was very unique because my dad was an actor and an opera singer, and my mom was a classical pianist and a choral director. They also were very actively involved. Our whole family was in the opera house there in our town. So when we were not at the performing arts school every single day, we were performing in shows all the time, or my dad was out filming movies. Northwest Indiana is right by Chicago. They film a lot of movies in Chicago. So my dad was in a lot of movies and on set. So it just was a very interesting upbringing. But the biggest challenges for me was being a child of an alcoholic parent. And anybody who has ever had the privilege of growing up that way, it's difficult. The rules always change. Everything is always wrong. You never know how to succeed. There's usually just a lack of love and appreciation and acknowledgement. And it's a very difficult environment for a young child. So with me, I learned, being the youngest of four, to be very independent, to take care of myself. And when I growing up in the performing arts, what it was is performance-based love, and it was achievement-based love. So my DNA, as it was written growing up, was if you do well, you get attention. And if you get attention, that means that you're loved. So for me, it was very difficult. I had a lot of very dark periods in my life. But what was bred out of that was I happened to care about achievement and doing well and taking care of myself. And that has really fueled a pretty impressive lineup of what I've been able to achieve. I turn 38 tomorrow. And I look back just at my life, and I'm sure we'll cover a lot more, but there's the childhood part of it. I can tell you more about the story if you want.
Well, that's pretty amazing. I'm going to ask you a question about the alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that helped you develop a stronger emotional intelligence because you had to read that every day? You know, what kind of, when your dad showed up after work or at home, or when you got to be around him, you didn't know kind of where he was, with the alcoholism and so forth. Do you think that kind of helped your emotional intelligence to this day?
Yeah. So let me throw you a curveball here. It wasn't my dad, it was my mom.
Okay.
And my mom was highly unpredictable, and she was a mean and nasty woman and highly manipulative, and you never knew. So EQ 100%. As a child of an alcoholic parent, you have to survey the situation. You have to get a strong read on the room and all of the variables around you. You're starting to figure out and plan your escape route. You have to plan how you're going to respond. You have to choose the path of least resistance. And also, the biggest thing I think will resonate with anyone that's grown up, the rules change every day. So, what you got in trouble for today and what you did wrong and what you're being screamed at or having objects thrown at you for today, if you do that same thing tomorrow, it might be totally acceptable. But the thing that you did good today, if you do that tomorrow, now all of a sudden that's wrong. And that's what you get in trouble for. So it's a lose proposition. There is very little chance for you to ever win as a child in that family because you never know. And so for me, when you deprive a child of just being loved and acknowledged and valued and nurtured and in a sense of just being cared for, those kids, myself included, go find ways to figure out how to get that. And so the other component of it is trying to identify patterns and trends and be highly observant. What makes my mom happy? When does she smile? When do I get a pat on the back and not a slap against the head? How do I get that? And when you find the one thing where they actually like you for a minute, you want to do more of that because you want to be liked and you would hopefully also want to be loved. And that's where it becomes very challenging growing up in that environment because you find the few things. And so guess what? The few things for me were getting good grades and it was a good performance on stage, whether I was acting, singing, or dancing. That's when I got praise. It also came from making my bed, being fully self-sufficient, doing my own laundry, my own cooking, and everything from a very young age, and not bothering anybody. It also came from keeping my mouth shut, not interjecting. And so there were components I learned about just the day-to-day of if I do this, then I get that. And so, yeah, EQ, 100%. You think about the qualities of emotional intelligence. One, emotional self-awareness. Two, you look at things like flexibility. Three, delayed gratification instead of immediate. So as a child, I learned very quickly, like, to try to avoid that desire for immediate gratification because I just couldn't get what I wanted out of the situation. Basic things I wanted, like acknowledgement, love, praise, any of that, right? So I had to learn to work in the world of delayed gratification. And anyway, other elements of EQ, empathy. And I would learn in a very twisted way to be empathetic of my mom's state. And I would use my listening skills to listen to her tone, her word choice, who she was going to be complaining about, and what stories she was telling. I would also look at the variance in the stories because they just changed over time.
Yeah.
And to be able to read the room and know how to protect myself. But it was all just survival in that.
Amazing. So as you got into, let's say, your high school and college years, did things change a little bit for you, or were they kind of the same?
Well, when I got into high school, fun story. It's not really fun, but when I was 14 and my brother was 15, my parents came to us. We were still living in Northwest Indiana, and they admitted that they had lost everything. They had made some bad decisions in the business. Unfortunately, they stole money from the community and from people in the community. We were upside down on our house. We hadn't been paying for the house. The bank had seized the house. They're closing down the business. And we, as a family, apparently had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars from people in the community. And so we had 2 days to pack up everything and to leave. But because the bank was seizing our house, they're also seizing our assets. And so they hired an auction company, the bank. And we had one of those giant red and white tents in our backyard, auctioning off all of our family heirlooms and anything of value inside of our house. What we were allowed to keep, mostly just like clothes and some basic personal belongings. We put it into a moving truck and we left. And it was a very interesting situation to experience because I didn't quite understand the magnitude of what was happening. I also didn't have time to say goodbye to my friends, really, or to put closure on that 14 years of my life. All I knew, friends and family. So we fled. We drove across the country, my parents had to file bankruptcy and really lost everything. We didn't have a penny to our name. And they both took minimum wage jobs. They've been in the performing arts for years, so they didn't really have transferable skills into the corporate workforce. So they took minimum wage jobs. My brother and I was 14, he was 15, and I turned 15, or maybe I can't remember our ages. We're super close in age, but I was turning, maybe he had just turned 16, and I was turning 15 just months later after we moved. And we both had to work and fully support ourselves. So when I turned 15, I got my first job at King Soopers, the grocery store out here. And that was just about 3 months after we moved out here. And because I was 15, my mom had to be a co-signer on the bank account because I couldn't have my own bank account until I was 16. So for the first year, also with OSHA laws, you can only work X amount of hours per week. And I was working, it's minimum wage, $6.60 an hour back then in 1998. And I worked at the grocery store. My mom was on my bank account. She took all the money she withdrew the money that I made, yet I was being asked to support myself. So unfortunately, I started stealing food just so I had something to eat. I think I was very short back then. I don't even get broke 5 feet yet when I was 15. I lost 20 pounds that year. I barely had food to survive, and I was stealing it, which was so morally just against all my beliefs, but it was survival. She continued her drinking, and the alcoholism was awful inside of our house. I continued to pursue dance. I started dancing with the Boulder Ballet, eventually auditioned to be on my high school dance team. And I did everything I could to maintain my grades. I was a straight A student, honors student in IB and AP classes. Ended up with a 4.2 GPA. When my mom got off, when I graduated with honors, top 10% of my class. When I turned 16, my mom was able to get off of my bank account. So I actually started to build wealth for the first time. I was able to get my own car payment, insurance, do all of that, and independently live. By the time I was 18, I turned 18 early in my senior year. And I had front loaded all my classes in my freshman and sophomore year of high school. And so I only had 3 classes my senior year between like 12 p.m. and 2:50 p.m. or something. So I was able to work. I had 2 jobs and fully support myself. And I just got out of the house. I was staying with my boyfriend at the time and just really wasn't home. And I started this journey of figuring out how to heal and be independent and get away from my family. But when I was 18, my senior year, April 22nd or 24th, I got in a car accident, and it was actually really bad. I had received a scholarship to CU Boulder on a dance scholarship. I had dreams of becoming a professional dancer. Also, because I was academically blessed, I wanted to get my degree in MCDB, molecular cellular developmental biology. I wanted to be a dentist. And unfortunately, I got in a car accident, crashed my car on the highway. I was pretty serious, and I couldn't even walk. So I did not get to pursue dance professionally at that time. I was able to try to heal a little bit before I started college at CU Boulder in that fall. Unfortunately, it was just difficult for me to get around campus. Also, I couldn't really work. I was in a lot of pain. And so it didn't work out. I failed. I failed my classes. I got put on an academic probation. I couldn't even register for the second semester. I was like, screw this. I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I had moved out on my own. I was completely by myself with no moral compass. And I entered into 2 really dark years of my life. I just got mixed in with the wrong people, the wrong kinds of jobs. I really only through the good grace of God did I survive. I ended up getting married to a very abusive, awful man who was 10 years older than me. You tend to find what you know in relationships, in a sick and odd, terrible way. It actually felt comfortable to me. And I didn't know Jesus back then. I wasn't a Christian woman, but God certainly shows his mercy and grace for us, even when we don't know him. But very powerfully, I was able to survive that era of my life. And I came across a job ad in the newspaper for a district sales assistant position in a company called Payroll HR Company. I didn't know anything about corporate America. I was just working like bartending jobs and riding around on the back of a motorcycle in a bikini, thinking that was a profession. And I did an interview and they hired me. And I don't know why, because I didn't have any experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was probably the biggest turning point in my life at 22 years old, was getting that job.
So this is called the People Progressing Podcast. And your story is amazing. How did you, in your own mind, keep yourself overcoming adversity after adversity after adversity and keep yourself going? You mentioned a little bit of, the survival mode part of it, but there was something more inside you that kept you going and kept you getting through all this adversity. Do you know what it was?
Well, part of it is, I think from the day that I was born, I was taught survival
Yeah.
skills. I didn't have loving, nurturing parents that met my needs. I was a complete afterthought. And when I was around parents, it was screaming and hatred. And, so like as a
Yeah.
baby,
You
as a
didn't know anything
child,
different.
I've never known anything different
Yeah.
other than fighting for survival and figuring it out. And so me dealing with adversity, I had never known up until 22 years old, this point in the story, I had never not known adversity.
Yeah.
I guess I just thought that that was what life was and it was normal. Whereas like some people like my husband, who's the complete opposite of me, had an unbelievable childhood. That kind of my now husband, not the one early in the story. Right. And had an unbelievable upbringing. His family is just, I'm so fortunate to have married into this family. My husband hasn't known a day of adversity. So if he was met with adversity right now, does he have the playbook for it?
Right.
Probably not. But he's a very smart man. And so he would look at the variables. He's very calm. And I'm sure he would just lay it all out and figure out what to do. But for me, it's just ingrained in my DNA. I know how to overcome adversity and work through challenge like this.
Yeah. So let's get into now that you're 22, you got this new job. You're not real sure how you got the job, but we can say a little bit, the grace of God is putting you on the path. Now we're going to go into that here in a minute. Tell us a little bit about that job and what that job did for you in terms of your growth as a person and your growth in terms of your confidence in yourself.
I didn't know what corporate America was like. I had never seen a professional work environment. I didn't know what it was. Well, here's how it changed me forever. I saw people showing up to an office in suits, buttoned up, looking fantastic from head to toe. I saw them have passion and care for the work that they did. I happened to take a job as an assistant on the number one sales team in the country. I got to witness behavior of the people that I would soon become. I got to see a whole different world that didn't involve abuse and addiction and demons. I got to see people with beautiful lives just show up every day and work hard and get great outcomes as a result. And I'd never seen anything like that. I watched a team of 8 sales professionals and a manager show me what my future life was going to be. And I had never had that modeled before. One thing I'm really fortunate, half the team were women, high performing, top 10 reps, making several $100,000 a year, married, amazing husbands, beautiful children, showing and demonstrating for me what it was to be a wife and a mom and a high performing, talented individual, a high earner. I'd never seen that before. That was modeled for me every day. And I could feel that calling inside of me, like I'm capable of doing this, even though not anything I could show you in my track record would have said I could do it, but I felt it on the inside. And so I went to my manager and I said, I think this is the future life for me, but I have no idea how to get there. And so together we co-created a development plan, personally, professionally, of classes I was going to take, enrolling myself back in college, and also just taking Dale Carnegie classes and listening to Brian Tracy and learning the profession of sales. I set out on a path of personal development, and very quickly my life started changing. I started changing, and I grew apart from that terrible, awful husband I had at the time. I started to see almost like an outsider, like an out of body experience, because I was evolving and growing. And then I felt like I could look at my home life and say, you don't have to subject yourself to this anymore. You don't have to be mentally and verbally abused. You don't have to be knocked down and spoken down to. You don't have to be held inside of this house as a prisoner and treated the way that I was. And it was the first time that I just started to grow confidence in my own as my own person. And I ended up divorcing from that man. I'm so forever grateful for my sales manager at Paychex. They actually helped me move out of that house. It was a very scary experience, but we knew that my ex-husband was working that day. They rented a U-Haul. We went on lunch hour. I was just watched two of my sales managers, my boss and his boss. They had their suits on. They like put their jacket in the car, threw their tire on their neck. They run into this house. They're taking all my stuff, moving it out, moved me to a safe place in an apartment. And they helped me through that. And it was unlike anything I had experienced, somebody caring for me at that level and helping me start the next chapter of my life in a really safe, protected way. Well, it wasn't long after that I got promoted and put on the mid-market sales team, to a lot of people's dismay. I was so young. I was 24, still hadn't earned my degree yet. I was working on it, but never had sold anything, just didn't have that track record or professional experience other than being a district sales assistant at $13 an hour. And people thought, there's no way you can put her in mid-market sales. She's so young. She's unpolished. You can't put her in front of a CEO. She's going to fall flat on her face. And so they actually gave my sales manager like a really hard time, said some mean things like, this is the worst decision you've made in your 16-year career.
Wow.
He's like, you have to trust me. You have to trust me. And I heard all that feedback and I just channeled it. And I said, I'm going to channel this. I'm going to prove them all wrong. So I got the job.
That.
I went to 2 weeks of corporate training. I came back. It was my first day of sales. I sat down at the desk and I was so motivated. I'm like, I'm going to outsell every person here. But then I was looking at the phone and sweating like, oh my gosh, I actually have to pick up the phone and call people. I was so scared. Like, wait, I can't do this. The sales is really scary. What did I get myself into? So I went back into my manager's office. I'm like, all this that we worked for over the last 2 years, like, I can't do it. And he just gave me that encouragement. And he's like, sales is scary, but if you transition away from the yuck of like the aggressiveness or sleazy salesperson, if you just really transition into you're making someone's life better, sales can be amazing. So he actually had me call some of our existing customers to just talk to them and hear the passion behind them choosing that company as a service provider and how their lives were better. And I did that. I made several calls that gave me the confidence. And I just remember jumping in head first and saying, I'm going to do this. And my quota that year was 150,000. I sold 758,000, which was more than number 2 and 3 reps combined. And I got so much recognition that year and was able to walk the stage and get that trophy and the crystal and everything else and all the recognition. Plus I took my earnings from about 30,000 a year to about 150,000 a year, which was completely transformative for somebody that was just growing up in a impoverished state. And so I, unfortunately, the downside to this story is I was using that fame and recognition and money to heal my wounds.
Yeah.
And so I actually, this sounds like a very triumphant, like, oh my gosh, Mary, you did it. Unfortunately, I turned into a monster because I never took the time to heal. I never took the time to understand what real love was. And so I started to heal my wounds with the things of this world. And it took me down a really dark path, which is very interesting because on the outside, especially my friends, I had a bunch of friends who were like 25 years old. I'm making 200,000 a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're seeing my success, my 2 houses, my 2 cars. I had like a BMW Z4 Roadster, I paid cash for, and they're looking at me and they're super jealous. And they're like, I want that life. But you know what? On the inside, I was broken,
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
empty, destroyed, distraught. And I was wondering why, like I did everything the world said to do, which was go make money, go be successful,
Yeah.
do all these things. I had it all and I hated my life. And I lived that way, being a number one rep, making so much money, so successful to everyone else on the outside. And I would just sit at home at night with my martinis and my Cheetos and cry. I was on every dating app you could think of. I had so many dates lined up because I just could not get the personal side right. I didn't know what love looked like,
Yeah. Yeah.
how to be treated. And it wasn't until I really hit my rock bottom at 29, made some really bad decisions. And finally, God had enough, I think, of me ignoring him and everything that he was trying to do for me. And he came in and interrupted my life in a way that only he could, to rip away everything from me, turn it completely upside down. So I would finally come to him and listen, but still protect me to the point where irreparable harm wasn't caused. And that's the God that we serve.
Yeah.
Um,
This is
and
so
everything
awesome.
changed for me at that point.
Well, I want to go back just a little bit. When you first you mentioned that your sales manager helped you move out of that situation, physically went over to your place and moved your stuff out for you. Is that the same sales manager that hired you for that position, that he was getting so much grief from the other people in the business? Is that the
Yes.
same guy?
Mhm.
Unbelievable story in terms of leadership there, because when you took over that job and you knew that he was getting grief and all that stuff, you suddenly kind of had a purpose that was bigger than yourself. You wanted to help him prove you right as well. And I always say that when your purpose is greater than yourself, you really find your real meaning in life. And that's kind of what propelled you there. And again, you go through this period of time. Let's talk a little bit about your relationship now. You touched on it, your relationship with God. It happened when you were 29, where it really kind of hit you. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
What happened?
Yeah. Now I'm
This is
thinking back,
powerful.
I may have been 28. I for so many years of my life, they're a blur. I never
Yeah.
remember what year it was or how old I was. So
Yeah.
sometimes I get this part wrong in the story.
Well,
I
you're
may have been
doing,
28.
you,
I should probably like go do
I just
math
want
one
to
day and
tell
write
you
this
this,
down.
you're doing unbelievable with this story. I am like almost in tears sitting here listening to you. You're inspiring me to no end. So let's get into the God piece, because I know this is huge and it can help so many people.
Yeah. I actually have never said publicly what happened to me. I'm not sure that today is the day. But
You don't have to just,
yeah, but it was a moment where everything, like, this is how good God is that he'll stop at nothing to get our attention. And it's those of us that are brave enough to listen and realize that maybe the storm that we're dealing with is just a wake up call, and that he's clearing a path for us if we're willing to believe that there could be a blessing in the negative circumstance or the challenge that we're dealing with. And I hadn't listened to him at that point. I had been dealing with a lot of challenges and negative circumstances, and he had to do something in my life that got my attention. And with that, I finally felt like I had exhausted every potential way that I could try to solve my own problems. And the only thing I had left was him. And that's where the journey started of healing. And I remember going to church for the first time as an adult. And I was listening to the worship music and they were singing words about love, and the words were up on the screen. And this is how broken I was. Those words felt gross to
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
of
You
how
didn't,
could anyone love me this way? How could anyone extend love that way ever to anyone? Um, that was the big awareness point. And it was also just the light that I had been searching for. I think naturally humans are attracted to the light. And I wasn't ready to give up on it or think it was phony business. I just started to have a curious mind and to learn more. For about 2 or 3 years of my life, every time that I prayed and I learned how to pray, I would just bawl like a baby, like a child. I mean, just uncontrollably um, cry. And I never understood why. And I just remember in those early years of becoming a Christian, the full surrender and admittance that I didn't have the answers and I didn't know the way. And truly believing that where I was weak, God was strong. And I'm such a survivalist and a stubborn figure it outer that I still, like I said, I'm about to turn 38. I still have periods in my life, one very recent that I'm recovering from right now, where I allow myself to get in the driver's seat because somewhere along the way, I start believing that I have all the answers and I start driving forward. But it was through full surrender and just learning a new life that I was able to start walking with him and allowing him to guide my steps. God doesn't mess around. I mean, when you surrender and say yes to him, I mean, he transformed my life within 3 months of me giving my heart to Jesus. I met my husband, my now husband, and this is a pure man of God. He is
this is so awesome.
um
You've told me a little bit about him, Mary, and
I
I,
just don't
what
deserve
you've,
the man.
yeah, no, you do.
It's just
You do.
he's never once asked about my past. He's never judged me. And he honors me in a way that I only thought that Christ could. He values who I am and exactly how I was made. And he has so much grace towards me, even when I still screw up, like I did here recently. And this overachieving side of me just gets in the driver's seat and I work myself to exhaustion, usually at his, sacrifice. And it's him and my son that I will neglect. But he's he has proved to me that God exists. Because trust me, I tried. I dated over probably 100 men trying to find. I can't tell you how many first dates I've been on, and just so disappointed after each one. Like, nope, not it. Nope, not it. Nope, not
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I knew the second I met my husband, it truly was love at first sight. I knew the second I met him. And we've been married now for 7 years, and I'm just beyond blessed for this to have this man. So interestingly, when I became a Christian and very quickly thereafter met my husband, I cleaned up my whole life. I actually entered into a period of sobriety and also like quit swearing. I quit eating and abusing my body the way that I was with gluttonous behavior. And I just started taking care of myself and really treating my body like that temple and just being good inside and out. And there were a lot of years where healing could start. And we were blessed with a baby boy. He just turned 5 in August, and unbelievable kiddo. So on my journey, after this wake up call and then meeting my husband, I had actually been in the middle of running my own company during that 3 years. So I left Paychex in 2011. I took an equity position with one of my client companies who was a startup. And they brought me on as a VP of sales and marketing. I was 27. I didn't know how to really be a VP or anything at that level. I'd come off of an amazing career at Paychex, number one rep, just, broke records, sold millions. It was still in my journey when I was a very broken individual, but I did quite well professionally. I actually helped quadruple the size of that company in 7 months. And that's when I fell in love with scaling companies and go-to-market strategy and business strategy. I actually started my first company right after that when I was 27, and I started Butterfly Creative. And so I started this company, and I very much enjoyed being a business strategist for startups and entrepreneurs, but I just made so many rookie mistakes. One, I wasn't taking care of myself. I was drinking every night. I was partying like crazy. I just didn't know how to delegate. I had a huge ego. I was arrogant. I wasn't nice to people. I cursed like a sailor. I just didn't have my life in order. And as a very young and immature business owner, I actually did very good work, but I wasn't a good person. And so for 3 years, I struggled. And I came to Christ in the middle of that journey as a business owner. And so things really started to shift and turn around for me towards the end of it. But really, what God was telling me during that time is it wasn't my time yet to be an entrepreneur. I had a lot more maturing and healing to do internally before I could actually go be the CEO that I very much felt destined to be. And so I felt very led to go back to Paychex and to have a stable income for me and my now new husband at the time in 2014. And so I made that decision to go back to work there. I was a completely changed woman. Who I showed up as in 2014 was a complete difference from who I was when I sold for Paychex previously. And what I was really impressed with myself is the second time around, I was a kind, loving, humble, sweet person, not the monster, highly competitive, steamroll over people to do whatever it took to be successful. And guess what? I was still a top 10 rep. I
Yeah.
still broke
Yeah.
records. I still sold hundreds of thousands of dollars, but people were actually honored through the process. And the way people experienced me was very life giving. That's when I started to realize that I could further the kingdom of God through the way that I treat people, that God was gifting me marketplace talents, and that I could actually form my own ministry and how I treated people. And I could create experiences that caused people to raise their eyebrow and wonder and say, I didn't know that's what Christianity looked like. And then maybe wasn't their experience with Christianity in the past. I've never been one to walk around quoting scripture. I typically don't proclaim my faith, outwardly boldly in front of people. But what I do is I walk the walk. And I do what's written in the Bible, and I actually treat people and love my neighbor, and I respect people and I honor them, and I actually move the needle in their lives to the best of my ability to share my gifts with them. And it was through that realization that I can actually be a pretty remarkable human being and make other people's lives better, that I started to feel like I was stepping into my purpose and stepping into my calling. And when my son was about 9 months old, I sold one of the top 10 largest deals in Paychex history. I sold it with a partner. I was able to get a six-figure commission check. And it was finally at that time, I just looked at my husband and I said, I understand I'm the breadwinner. I understand we have a year-old son, but I want to start my own company. And he just looked at me and said, okay. That's how great my husband is.
I
And
got
I
to meet
did.
him.
The company I run now, I started 4 years ago, actually, like almost to the day.
And so I'm going to go back into this because you said something that really hit home with me is when you changed your viewpoint of helping people and serving people and making their lives better and doing those types of things through God, how did that change your self-worth, your stress level, your just ability to be grateful for things?
Yeah. Do you know what it feels like when it turns from spring to summer? And it's kind of like that first morning that doesn't have the chill in the air.
Yeah.
And you step outside and you feel that sun on your skin and it warms you so quickly. There's almost a tingle inside and that bright, bright light in your eyes where you have to close your eyes. The sun is so bright. and you can feel to the follicle and cells on your skin, you can feel receiving that warmth and that tingle. And you're so thankful to be coming out of that cold season. And you're so thankful that it's the first morning that doesn't have that chill in the air. And you feel this warm summer season coming upon. And there's just this hope and light and warmth and almost like a reassurance and just this overwhelming sense of joy. That is what it feels like when you finally believe that you don't have to deal with those cold mornings anymore, or to be in the dark, or that you don't have to feel suppressed or oppressed or held back, that you show up to the day and don't even have this negative self-talk and the feelings anymore that everything is stacked against you. It's entering the day with optimism and peace in your heart and faith that life is just good. And for me, the transition, it was always reactive and in the dark and fighting battles. I grew up as a survivalist. And so I was always on edge and alert for the next bad thing to happen so that I could navigate it.
Yeah.
I don't live that way anymore.
Yeah.
I'm now actually surprised when bad things happen. And I do lean on God to help me solve them, because I have surrendered a lot of that survivalist mentality and living in that pessimistic view. But when I do get met, and when I am met with adversity these days, and I had a period of adversity very recent in my life, and it felt like it went on a little too long. And I had that conversation with God.
Yeah.
I don't like this.
Yeah.
Take it away from me.
Yeah.
I've had enough. Like, I'm at my breaking point. Like, whatever you're trying to teach me, I'm waving the white flag. I cannot do this anymore. And again, we serve such a good God that he is so committed to me living a joyous life and serving him and being a good steward, that he will allow me to go through those trials so that I can come back to him and stop believing that I can run this ship by myself, because the answer is that I can't. He is a good God, and he will humble me for the greater of his kingdom, for the greater of the people in my life, and for me, because he loves me. So that's what it feels like.
Amazing. The way you put that has blown me away. And I want to go through this because I actually have goosebumps right now. There's two ways to do it. The first way was, I'm going to do whatever I can to be successful. And if that means stepping on your head, I'm going to step on your head. If that means being nasty, I'm going to be nasty. If that means I don't care about anybody else but me, that means, and I'm going to do it. And you were pretty successful in terms of awards, money, those things. The other way to do it is working through God, working for God, and putting people first, and making sure that you're making somebody else's life better, making their day better, and doing all those things. And what you've proven in what you've just said, and tell me if I'm wrong, Mary, but what you've proven is you can do it a way that makes you feel more peaceful, more happy, more grateful of life, more understanding of life, looking at it as, I'm not looking for the next bad thing to happen. I'm just enjoying the good things. You can do it. You've done it both ways. Which is the better way?
Oh my gosh. That's the hardest question I've ever had to answer. Just kidding. It's just beautiful that
you're so
God
much
has given
proof
us
of
that
it.
freedom.
Yeah,
he's given us the ability to choose, and it is some days hard to choose.
Yeah.
Even though it's the easiest answer that or easiest question to answer that you just asked. We as humans are given that question every day. God asks us every day. We're given an opportunity to choose, sometimes multiple times within the same day.
Yeah.
And how often do we choose the latter, and we choose it unknowingly? And then we wonder why our life is full of stress and strain and strife.
Right. Yes. I think one of the greatest thing that God gives us is the power of choice.
Of course.
And I think so many people out there don't understand that. They don't understand that they have the power of choice. And you're proof positive of making that choice. And everyone listening to this, I want you to understand that you can have the power of choice. You can choose to be on one side. I don't want to say sides because it's not really sides, but it's the power of choice. How do you want to take this day on? Do you want to take it on with grace? You want to take it on with peace? You want to take it on and go out and compete, because we all want to compete, but we want to do it in a way where we're lifting others up? Or do we want to do it in a way where we're stepping on someone else's head to get where we want to go? And you have the power of choice on how you deal with, you were just talking about some adversity that you've gone through. You had the power of choice. You really could have gone back into some of the old Mary, some of the
Well, and
old,
I do from time to time.
yeah,
And it creeps up on me. And that's exactly what happened here. God gave a significant blessing to me, my family, the business in 2020 when COVID hit. And he was able to allow me to rebuild the business in a way that I could honor him first, my family second, and the company third. Turns out everybody won in that scenario. We were the biggest we had been to that point, the most profitable. Our clients had unbelievable results. Our employees were very happy, and my home life was tremendous. But you know what I did? I started to believe my own press. So I started to walk around and say, that's because of me. And in 2021, I'm like, look at what we did. Therefore, we should go on our own journey of scaling. Let's double in size. Let's go for world domination. And I put myself in the driver's seat because I started to believe that the success was because of me and not what God had given me as a steward. And I didn't give the glory to him. I took the credit for it. And then I took that credit and I drove a ship and I doubled the size of my company from 12 people at our biggest point in September. We were up to 27 or 28 people. We broke a record and did a $400,000 month. We're a 4-year-old company, and being at a run rate of almost a $5 million company is absolutely tremendous. And I felt very proud. Unfortunately, that's not how God wanted this company built. And he allowed me to experience the consequences for the decisions. Another way of saying that was I was able to experience the fruit from the seeds I had put in the ground while we grew too fast without infrastructure. And we grew for vanity reasons because I wanted to chase the top line revenue number and a profitability number. And God, I promise you, this is the last thing God wants us to use as our North Star. And I allowed the quality of life for my employees to suffer. It's bad, but we serve a good God. And he came in and he did what he needed to do to disrupt my life, to remind me that this is not my company and that it's his. I am simply a steward, and he has chosen me to be at the helm of this company, and that together we will do something far greater than I'll ever be able to do on my own. The choice that he has given us, I will say, you said you didn't necessarily want to say it was sides. It is sides. You are for him or you are against him.
yeah, yeah.
And when you choose to do one thing out of 1,000 that is not a part of his will, his way, by his truth, then you are against him. It's not you're mostly for him. That's not what the scripture says. You are for him or you are against him,
Yeah.
which means you are all in. Or if you choose to have one foot out, one finger out, 1 ounce of you out, then you are against him.
Wow.
And if you allow that to continue for a certain period of time, because he loves us, because he loves me, because he knows what I am capable of and where my heart truly is for him, he will do what he needs to do to pull me back on track. And that is what serving a good God is. And that may not be in agreement with people when they go through trials and challenges and see how nasty it can actually feel on the day-to-day when you're in the middle of that storm and they go, woe is me, and they start complaining and blaming and hating life and feeling negative. It's a reminder that those are probably the seeds that you planted, and that's the fruit that you're bearing because of the decisions that you made weeks ago, months ago, a year ago, yesterday. Just as the sun rises in the morning, so does the fruit grow from the seeds that we plant. You can't plant apple seeds and expect oranges, yet many of us do.
Man, this is unbelievable. And you're just so much more conscious about things now, aren't you? About when things come to test you, adversity comes and it tests you, you're more conscious about your choices and everything else on those things when they come. That's what the beauty of what you're saying is too, is that again, it goes back to that choice, but you're more conscious of the choices you can make in those. And that's beautiful what you're saying. Let's go where you're at now.
Yeah, wonderful.
With the house.
We're running out of time.
Yeah,
here.
I know. I got to get going. House of Revenue. Just real quick, where are you at with that? And tell people a little bit about how they can get a hold of you and so forth. You do a podcast as well. Mm-hmm. You're always trying to serve others. Tell us just a little bit about that.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Mary Grothe, Grothe. And that's a good place to connect to start. House of Revenue, houseofrevenue.com. That's our company. And we scale companies for a living. It is incredible work. I'm so proud of my team. We're proudly sitting at 23 team members. We did take a little bit of a step back so that we could simplify and go back to what God has created and put us on a very good, solid plan. So we did take a little step back. We scale companies. So we rebrand them. We build their inbound marketing engines. We build out their sales team and their service teams. We build their tech stack and their RevOps layer. With our second stage scaling companies, those have already achieved a few million, but they've plateaued and they don't know how to get, we typically scale companies between 2 and 20 million in revenue. And so we find those second stage growth are already past that clunky startup phase, which can be pretty tumultuous. But with that group of people, we have a 100% success rate that we're very proud of. We've scaled them all. And it's very hands-on work. So that's what we get to do for a living. We get to change lives through that, which is a great blessing that I've been given to be able to do that. And then Revenue Radio is the name of my show. It's weekly. You can find it anywhere that you would find a podcast. You can also find it on our houseofrevenue.com page. So if you liked anything that you've heard today that came out of my mouth, subscribe because you could hear it every week if you want.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I'm just going to ask, I know we're out of time. I got 3 questions and that's done. What's your purpose in life?
To further the kingdom of God through the marketplace.
What's your perspective on life?
I will never waste the opportunity I've been given to fulfill my purpose.
And what is your passion in life?
To love others in the way that it took me 29 years to learn about.
Mary, you're a beautiful person. This has been amazing. You've changed my life today. I want to just thank you for coming on, and I want to thank you for sharing. You were very, very giving today. I'll just say it that way. I actually am starting to tear up right now. Your story is amazing. You are amazing. Please get on the House of Revenue website, see what Mary does. I know that if you want your company to grow, it will grow with Mary and her staff. I met with her a couple of weeks ago, and I walked out of that meeting just fascinated. That's all I can say, but I just appreciate you coming on and helping people today. I know you didn't have to do this, and I know you're busy, and I know your schedule is busy. I feel fortunate, and I know our listeners feel fortunate for you coming on. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
And I want everyone to have a great day. And thanks for listening to this week's edition of the People Progressing podcast. Share this with people because people need to hear Mary's story and how much you can learn from her. And I just appreciate you coming on and listening today. Subscribe, do whatever you do for podcasts to keep listening to this podcast. So thanks a lot. Have a great day. Bye-bye.